Hey everybody, my name's Dave from the Nerd Stash. I'm the reviews editor here, and I'm with one of our senior writers who was fortunate enough to attend a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth preview event in LA a couple weeks ago. Say hello to everybody, Nat.
Hey, my name is Nat. As Dave said, I'm a senior writer for the Nerd Stash, and yeah, I got sent out to LA not too long ago, and really excited to share everything that we saw.
Yeah, no, let's just get right into it. We're just gonna kind of walk and talk in video form, I guess, is the best way to say. So just bounce us around here and just kind of share a little bit of the footage you have captured here for us.
Well, it's interesting because the Square Enix absolutely set the event up to be atmospheric while you're playing the game. Um, the room itself was a huge white dome that had images of the game projected against the walls. So as I'm playing the game itself, I'm enveloped in everything Final Fantasy all around me too. So that's number one. Uh, Playing the game itself, it was a lot, and probably the best way I could phrase it is a lot like playing Final Fantasy VII for the very first time. Not because it's a different game, but because they do such a good job at reimagining it and making it feel like it's something brand new, if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. Because I mean, I think that even speaks to the title of the game. You know, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. You know, that's kind of like the name that the subtitle you would throw onto a full reboot or something like of that nature.
And it definitely, I don't want to say definitely feels like it because that's exactly what it is, but it's a whole new experience rather than a remake or a reboot, or it's more than that.
Yeah, I guess like just from the outside looking in, when I think of the things they've added here compared to remake a few years ago, the obviously nostalgia is a big thing, and playing on that obviously is a big reason why this exists. But I think whereas a reboot is kind of like, we're just gonna like redo that, change the storyline. Rebirth is interesting because it almost seems like we are trying to give you the player, especially if you're someone who loves Final Fantasy VII, that experience, but in an like we want to recreate the feelings you felt playing that, but obviously it's not a one to one. They had to kind of
Mhm.
reinvent the wheel here, and that kind of seems like from the footage you captured and from what you're saying, like kind of what they're doing with this game.
That's that more than anything, I suppose the biggest takeaway I have is back in when did the original release? 1997?
Oh yeah.
Back then, this game was the first of its kind in a lot of ways. Feels like they're trying to, and confidently so, recreate that same feeling of reinventing and creating something that you haven't seen before.
I just want to bring up here. So, what are we looking at as a triple triad fan? This is the new cards game, Queen's Blood. What are your first thoughts when you had to play this?
My very first thoughts were one, that I'm not very good at it. Um, and two, that I can 100% see it being uh, a game that people will try to bring into the real world to play, if that makes sense as well.
We're basically waiting for the box Queen's Blood card game coming this summer or something. Is what you're saying?
Yes, 100%. We're
We,
definitely going to be getting a collector's edition.
yeah, we're gonna be Queen's Blooding at every PAX for the foreseeable future. Is essentially what's going on here.
That's exactly how it feels, especially right after this part, actually. You'll notice that there's people in the area that have the Queen's Blood marker above their head, so you can go ahead and play with people and gain more cards, and it definitely does feel like this game's Gwent.
Yeah, which it's not a surprise. They've stated that they've been inspired by The Witcher 3, which, I mean, anyone making open world RPGs has had some influence from The Witcher 3's existence, but I don't think it's a bad thing. If you want to, anyone that wants to throw in really fun, addictive card games, why not? Let's talk about a little bit of these open world kind of mechanics and systems here. This footage right here, you are running around. Obviously, we're not confined to the very tight corridors of Midgar anymore. You are just out in the world. So, kind of just base impressions of kind of how this felt to move around in and take in.
Well, and realistically, I prefer this sort of open world exploration aspect. I think you had just said it's very Ubisoft Assassin's Creed like in the way that the buildings are scalable in a way. Um, in fact, there's when you first get into the actual open world, you're encouraged to explore in the way that the markers on your map will quite literally check mark whether or not you've completely explored a certain area and discovered all of the treasures or anything like that.
I just need to hear base guttural thoughts about the Chocobo dubstep and your opinions and life thoughts about how they interpreted the classic Chocobo music for a modern generation.
I don't know if much more needs to be said other than it's added to my Spotify, or that it'll be added the moment it can be.
Okay, that's because I hear this music and I'm like, this is certainly a choice. I'm sure there's going to be lots of variations of the Chocobo theme, just like there's a ton of variations of the battle music and things like that. So
I'm completely expecting it to be like on TikTok and people using the sound for just background music for things.
it's going to be, yeah, every Final Fantasy streamer will be having this dubstep as their alert music and things like that. I'm positive.
But it's smooth. Think like just listen to it. It's
no,
it's relaxing. It reminds you of Chocobos. What's better?
There's going to be an excerpt here where we're not talking, and I just let the dubstep flow because it is quite something. Speaking of the open world, and you talked a little bit about the towers and things like that. So, how did you feel without random encounters? Kind of like the flow of exploring and seamlessly going into combat and out of it. Like, how did that feel compared to a normal RPG and getting into a more rigid encounters, kind of left and right?
I personally do like, but I know there's a lot of people who didn't like the random encounters and very much prefer it to be like this. I'm a fan of both realistically. However, I do very much enjoy um, the exploration aspect a lot more in the way that the game specifically took it, where instead of you just going from place to place because you have to, that's what the next part of the mission is, you're really more encouraged to find things or resources, or there's a lot of resources throughout the game that you can find to help with crafting and to do all sorts of different things. It does a good job at doing that, and with reference to the monsters, it doesn't feel empty. I'm not sure if you've seen in the video that we're watching now, we haven't come across any monsters or enemies just yet. Battling them is incredibly seamless. You're pretty much already thrown into it, and you can choose to run away if you want to. Which I know some people do prefer to be able to do as opposed to being locked into that specific combat. And switching between characters also felt incredibly seamless. I don't do it until closer to the end of the demo, but it's easy to be able to, if you need a particular ability or if you need a character specifically to do something, just being able to switch was so seamless.
One thing I want to talk about, and kind of these two things kind of go together in a little bit. So, obviously, Final Fantasy VII Remake is not a perfect game. I loved it, but there's definitely some things that could have been refined and improved. I think one of those is the companion AI. Obviously, once you got into the flow of it and you were setting up shortcuts and swapping seamlessly and doing that stuff, sure, you could alleviate some of those issues. But in the big boss fight you have here, uh, was there any point in which like you were thinking about the companion AI, or was there any time where you were just like, okay, no, it seems totally fine?
No, I'll admit I felt as though the companion AI, and this very well could have been me as a player. Um, I felt that I couldn't push the AI to do what was actually necessary for the character that I'm playing. So, for example, if I'm playing Cloud or if I'm playing Barret, and they are running out of health or whatever, um, it doesn't occur to the AI to heal me, even if we have potions in the party. And I
Okay.
feel that that makes me have to think doubly about what it is that I'm doing because now I'm focusing on, okay, well, before something bad happens, let me switch because the switching between characters is incredibly seamless. So I'm not sure that's if it's intentional, I suppose,
Yeah, like
for
that's
I don't
just
want
the
to say for the
game
AI to be
design of
that way, but
combat. Yeah, they're like,
yeah, so
well,
I can
we want you swapping. That's kind of what we're trying to push you down.
yeah, so I can swap to another character easily and then use my resources that way, but then I feel, and I'm sure you could see it in the fight itself, that I'm just consistently switching between characters. And again, it could be that I'm just terrible at it, I'll admit.
I mean, hey, you had a limited amount of time. It wasn't like you had all day to, to get in there and mess with the systems. Uh, so everyone listening, we're not saying it's bad. We're just sharing initial thoughts here on a limited amount of time with the pre-release build. But it was definitely something that came up in the original, which, like I said, once you're into it, you're just swapping anyways and doing your thing. But I do, as a Final Fantasy 12 stan, I love the Gambit system and how they let you really dictate like the AI basically scripting and their behaviors. And I'm kind of hoping that obviously I don't think this game is going to get that deep into it, but it'd be nice to have more either control over how the AI works or just the AI themselves being better at taking advantage of, basically how you're setting them up for success.
Exactly. That's the best way to put it. I felt as though the AI didn't necessarily do a great job at setting me up for success, but the gameplay did a good job at allowing me to um, rectify that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to hear, but it's also like okay, that's I mean, pretty much that's exactly how remake went, and obviously this is building on that, so it's gonna have its share of new things, but it might be bringing over some things that could be touched on or refined a little bit. But like I said, early build, limited amount of time. Once we're in there, I'm sure we'll be able to poke around and see kind of the depth of that and how much that becomes an issue. I'm sure it won't be a problem for most of the game, but once you're getting into secret bosses and tough fights, it's one of those things where obviously in the old game you had full control over everything for all characters with turn-based nature of the combat. As soon as it becomes real time, then that kind of goes out the
That's another
window.
story.
Okay, well, Nat, I just want to thank you so much for sharing so much of your time. And I kind of just want to go out, closing thoughts on the experience and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And basically, like, what are your hopes for the full experience later on?
For the entire full experience, the game I know is going to resonate with the not even just fans of Final Fantasy, but fans of gaming as a whole. More so because of I don't want to say the magnitude, but sort of the magnitude of what Final Fantasy VII is. And this particular, and Rebirth in particular, is touching on subjects from the game that were the most revered, the most exciting parts, and the parts that people really remember. And so for the final release, my biggest hope and the biggest thing I'm most excited for is to um, see all of those scenes be so carefully and so meticulously redone to invoke that same emotion.
I do feel like that's a big part of it. You know, like, they're really aware of the moments that people hold dear, and obviously with the ending of remake and fate itself being kind of
Mhm.
thrown to the wayside, and now there's a whole conflict between the things we know and love and seeing them recreated, and then also on the other hand, how much of those things that how much of those moments that we know and love are going to be completely turned on their head and shock us again and things like that. So that's really exciting to hear. I just want to thank you, Nat, for going on our behalf, checking this out, and for being here with me, sitting down and sharing your thoughts and some of this gameplay you
First,
captured. Make sure to check out Nat's preview on the Nerd Stash. We have a full written preview with even more details and stuff. Like the video, subscribe, and please put your comments down below. We are going to answer them as best we can without getting in any trouble or breaking embargoes. And we'll see everybody February 29th when Final Fantasy VII Rebirth launches exclusively on PlayStation 5. Later, everybody.
thank you so much.
I guess we won't be coming back anytime soon.
Guess not. Let's go.